My name is Phyllis Hovenden. I just want to make some things a part of the record. I sent you received on Monday is verified by the UPS verification is remonstrance petition. I sent to each one of the Board of Zoning Appeals members. I'd like to make this an official part of the record. Exhibit A is the Sumner County zoning resolution. I would like to bring mention to Exhibit D, which has been mentioned throughout the night, that mobile homes were allowed in an R1A district, which was removed by a resolution on October 14th, 2008. I apologize for citing that in my in the remonstrance, but I was not given this until after I had mailed you what I mailed. And I also would like to make that a part of the record. And the only other thing I would like to make a part of the record is one Supreme Court case, Henry versus White, and Family Golf of Nashville versus Metropolitan Government. And I'd like to read this from the zoning authority given to this commission. I know you're a Board of Zoning Appeals, but given to the commission that they can divide the land into districts, determine the uses of building instructions or land. Pay attention. I gave you all a copy of this. All such regulations shall be uniform for each class or kind of building throughout each district, but the regulations in one district may vary from those in another. Henry versus White. You can put a gas station in all of the district. You can put a gas station in none of the district, but you can't put a gas station in certain places in the district. Same with the quarry. You can put it throughout R1A district. You can put it nowhere in R1A district, but you can't put it somewhere in R1A district. I'd like to make that a part of the record.
Sir, may I say one thing? We got time for...
Say it very briefly.
I am Judy Gilmore, Castalian Springs resident, probably within a quarter of a mile of the proposed quarry. Oh, let's forget that. There is going to be no quarry. I just want to tell about my pride in living in this community, and pride in the people here who are obviously fighting to maintain this pride. I've lived here for 40 years. My husband, his family has been in the area over 200 years. People on our property, 150-acre farm, part of the Angel family, as they pronounce it in this area, some of the original band of angels. We ourselves are one of the insignificant 58 average residents of the square mile living here. I feel confident for everything that's been said, and very appreciative for the historians who have spoken, the engineers. I'm not an engineer, I was a teacher. I've lived around. Used to think this area perhaps was a little boring. Castalian Springs, I used to try to get my husband, let's go to Nashville, let's do this, that, or the other. However, this has become my home, the most precious place on earth. To our grandchildren, I told Nell Fulbright, who was president of the Bledsoe Lake Historical Association just a few years ago, that I had planned to take our grandchildren over to see Wynwood, and hopefully that will occur soon. It's a structure that we hope to maintain. I don't know how many more hundreds of years we can maintain this, but my first thought is, if Hoover comes in here, perhaps is the beauty. And this is totally would be destructive of the peace, the tranquility, and all that we love in this free land of ours. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the attorneys who represented Save Castalian Springs and the other parties, we'd like to ask that you stop now the comments in support of us. We appreciate it dearly, but this body has now got to do their work. Mr. White is entitled to come and speak further about his client's desires and requests, I respectfully ask that we terminate this now. I do have someone who's just handed me a letter. It's not a part of the record. It's a letter from Dr. Norman Spencer regarding John Russell, and who lives in this area, and I'll just hand that to you as an exhibit, Mr. Porter. So I hope you do understand, Mr. White, we feel like it's time to stop this part. I know they've kind of go the limit, so it's in your hands. Do you have anything to say? And members of the board, we are prepared to close our side. I want you to look in tab number 11. And we have prepared a suggested motion to be made by a member of this body. We certainly think it's appropriate. We recognize you have the responsibility for doing what you think is appropriate. But we ask that you move to deny this application. We think there is more than adequate material evidence for this to be done, as well as the law being clearly in opposition to this application. So with all due respect, we do thank you for hearing our opposition. We thank the people who support. We appreciate the proper dignity that we have brought to this organization. Mr. White, I'm sure, appreciates that as well on behalf of his client.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Zoning Appeals, first want to thank you for your time and indulgence tonight. This has taken a great deal of time, a great deal of patience, and on behalf of my client, we appreciate that. I want to comment in closing, and I'll take less than 15 minutes allocated to us. We realize the property zoned R1A. What we have to clearly admit here is that the zoning ordinance for Sumner County does not have a requirement for a base zoning for a mining and quarrying operation. You just don't have it. Nobody can tell you in honesty that there isn't a base requirement. As I've said, many counties have got agricultural, rural, which is generally the prerequisite for a mining and quarrying operation. In most of the counties I'm aware of in Tennessee, that's the predicate. But you don't have that here. Some have other categories, but whatever the general category is, which is generally rural agricultural, you don't have any here as a base requirement. Under your land use classifications, and I've commented on that when I was up here earlier, the land use classification is very clear. No matter what's said here at the mic, nobody threw out their common sense when they came in the door here. And the common sense is you've got a land use systems document which has been made an agreement here, and that land use document recognizes that agricultural extractive activities, mining and quarrying, are recognized and allowed. That's your land classification use document. I'm not here giving a speech about what should or shouldn't take place. I'm asking you to consider the facts of what I'm saying to you. Your land use classification clearly recognizes mining and quarrying operations in agricultural/rural areas, period. Nobody can say anything differently than that, and be honest with you. Now, with respect to our operations, we have indicated to you that all of our operations is approached. All of those buildings will be located in the rural agricultural area. That's a condition. We're asking that you approve this. With that as a commitment, all buildings will be located in the rural area. That is 100% consistent with your land use classification. Now, with respect to the vision for the area in question, I've talked about the land use classification. I'm talking about the 2035 general plan. Your 2035 general plan clearly suggests that the bulk of this property stays agriculture and rural, period. Nobody can come up here and tell you anything any differently. What does that mean? That means that a mining and quarry activity is appropriate for that use, just like your land use classification document says. So people can come in and say, here's what R1A allows, here's what it doesn't allow, but the basics are you don't have a base zoning category that allows or disallows a mining and quarrying operation. You've got a land use classification that allows it in agricultural. You've got a 2035 plan that allows it in agricultural for the next 25 years. That's what your land use document, your smart growth plan indicates. Now, with respect to some of the comments that were made here this evening, I would ask you to respectfully consider some things on balance. We've tried to be factual. When we filed this application, we took every step that was suggested to us by the staff in this matter for information. I think some things were said that were clearly not accurate in the presentation on the other side. The first was some inference that we had basically selected the people that we would send the notices to, and we had ignored people that might be closer than others. That is absolutely not factual. Your staff is here, they'll confirm. They gave us a list of the people to notify. We took that exact list and we sent them to every one of those people. In addition to this, in trying to do it right, there was no mandate for some town hall meeting on this matter. We understood there's a significant number of people that didn't want this proposed application. We had no obligation to come to this room and discuss these plans, but we did. And we put them up on the board. We stayed here for several hours one night, took all the questions that were here, tried to answer them the best we could. So we didn't run and hide with respect to what the proposal was, and a lot of the town hall meeting things that were said that night were said again tonight. That's okay. I can't help but respect the people that came here tonight. They live here, they voiced their opinion. They wouldn't count for much if they didn't say that. So I have the greatest respect for that, but it doesn't change the land use classification, it doesn't change your land use plan for 2035. There was also comments made tonight that when we looked at the quarries, which we showed by pictures from different places, that there was residential, old and new, next to the quarry. There were comments made, just look at the distances. Look at the distances. They may only be 1,100 lineal feet on average, maybe 1,500. Well, what those pictures show, every one of them, is that old developments stayed next to the quarry and new subdivisions came next to those quarries. Period. New upscale residential development, as one of the speakers mentioned. They also said to you, here's apartments and condominiums that are also in that 1,100 to 1,500 feet. That proves our point. It's not just single family, it's not trailers, it's upscale apartments and condominiums and single family. And one of the speakers made the comment that they really wanted to correct me about a point, and they made a big deal about the fact that I had stated that there were developments that came next to these quarries and they were active, but he had found that one of the quarries was not an active quarry. That's what I told this whole room of people here on June 20th. I specifically told this entire group, one of those quarries is not active because I lived less than 2 miles from it. Never had any impact from it in any way, shape, or form, but that quarry was not active, and I made it very clear when I did the presentation. So to act like they had unearthed that there was something said in the presentation that wasn't accurate is less than candid, frankly. And anybody who was in the room that night, it's on record, will see that exact comment that I made there. With respect to Mr. Lockwood's comment, I've known Mr. Lockwood a long time. Mr. Lockwood is a landscape architect, and his comments tonight are frankly, I think, incredulous. He said, quarries are not consistent with a rural use. That was his comment. Now, that's factually totally incorrect. Your land use classification document says mining and quarrying is allowed and recognized in the rural agricultural area. So how can you make that comment when your land use classification document clearly says otherwise? How can you make that comment when your 2035 general plan is very clear and says the bulk of my client's property is to remain agricultural rural? One more time, mining and quarrying are allowed in those areas.